Good morning, everyone, and welcome. So excited to start this webinar today. Yeah, really been impressed by the interest in all this and the sort of buzz it's been creating. And yeah, we really look forward to having this hopefully very inspiring session with you all. So just to set the scene a bit, we here at Ipsos Healthcare in particular, we at least pride ourselves in being committed to listening to people. We try to uncover blind spots and build a bridge between people, healthcare professionals, and the healthcare industry through market research and knowledge creation. We are big market research organizations. We have a lot of muscles, and with those muscles also comes some responsibility to try to do some research that has a broader good and help push some of the important agendas in our society. And that's what we've been doing today. And yeah, and this commitment has driven on to run this self-funded initiative where we explore trends, challenges, unmet needs related to health discussed online by women in Scandinavia, in Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. And with this, we hope to make our small contribution to the growing body of research that aims to uncover these health inequalities that are experienced by women in all over the world, but specifically in Scandinavia for this research. And yeah, what we will present today explores these experiences, these uncertainties that are shared online. A few words on the method, just for you to know what you will go into and how to read the results. So the analysis has been made with Ipsos proprietary social intelligence solution called Synthesio. And in short, this tool allows us to access and analyze entries posted online across a wide range of forums, social media, and other online platforms. And already a small advertising. So if you are curious on the method, we will host a webinar on October 3rd, providing more details on the solution. We'll put a link in the chat where you can read more and sign up. But save that for later because we have a lot of important things to go over today. So when we looked into these online discussions on health, there's a lot of topics, a lot of themes, and it really brought a wealth of learnings and surprises to us when we look through it. And we're really happy to share some of the most important discussions that we uncovered with you today. A short note is that giving the wealth of information, the wealth of data, we have caught a lot of findings for the hour we have today, but we will distribute the full report and of course remain available for discussions and a deeper dive into some of the themes after this webinar. A small disclaimer is that these online discussions, they can tell us a lot. Really, we can really learn a lot about the trends, the current discussions, what's top of mind, what are the issues that in this case women struggle with. But of course, they do not have that clear weight and representation as other more traditional types of research. But what we can do is to identify, read and group these discussions, but without context. We cannot follow up directly with some person who posted a comment. We see it without context, but we group and we have a look at it, and then these discussions stand a bit on their own, and it's up to us to interpret their meaning in a broader context. So to put these discussions into context and provide perspective, we have invited a strong panel of experts who all share our commitment to the women's health agenda. So welcome all of you, and thank you for joining us today. I've put your names and titles on the screen, but I'll let you briefly introduce yourselves, your involvement in women's health, why you are here today, and just to create some excitement, I'm also curious to hear one thing that struck you when you read the full report. So let's start left to right with Mette.
Thank you, Stefan. My name is Mette Sørensen. I'm the managing director of Molecule. We are an agency specialized in health and life science. And we work broadly with health issues. So we cover both men and women's health. But we've taken a strong interest in women's health as we've seen the many gaps that are characterizing this area. And we have been working closely with this field for quite some time now, and are very happy to be able to contribute with the knowledge that we've gained. We feel that there is a huge void waiting to be filled, and our mission is really to try and close the gaps that we've seen. And our perspective is very much on the information, evidence, and research side. So many of the gaps that we see in women's health is related to that. Lack of information, lack of research, lack of funding, lack of prioritization. So that's what we really aim to contribute with and try and reset. And very happy to be here. We believe that the report really is a testimony to the lack of information that is currently shaping this whole area. So, and with lack of information comes mistrust, and you see the whole inequality spinning out of that. So I think one of the things that you've really clearly shown is that when you don't find information, you don't meet the expertise that you expect, then you seek online and you seek information elsewhere. And that information can be it can be right, but it can also be wrong. So we are very curious to have a discussion today also about the misinformation, the mistrust that can be generated, but also very positive around the whole the community feeling that is clearly out there, where women feel that they can share strong emotions, strong concerns when they're not being heard elsewhere. So very happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you, Mette.
Yeah, my name is Cherry. I just go by Cherry, even though it's Cherry Ann. I sit as a board member alternate in Dansk Kvindesamfund. I've done so for 6 months now, I think, but I'm also part of our kind of working group, working with invisible women, and more specifically medical issues in invisible women. So all the things that are not seen, a lot of what we're going to talk about today, but also how there's no research into females in general, how women are not used as test subjects in medicine and all this kind of stuff. I think it's good to see now in this report that women are starting questioning what is normal, because I think it's something we haven't felt we were allowed to do for a long time, and is why we're seeing a lot of the same things we're seeing today in this report. So I'm really excited to get started. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. Maja?
Yeah. I work with menstrual health and menopause, especially in the workplace, because the thing is that when we're not feeling well, when we're experiencing menopausal symptoms, then it influences our whole life, not just our private life. So it actually has a great impact on our careers and in all aspects. So my mission, or our mission in Hormones at Work, is that we actually start talking about this also, how it influences our careers and our workplace, in our work life as women. The thing is, when we go through menopause, or if we experience problems regarding our menstrual health, then it can be a very lonely process. This is what we hear when we give talks and talk to women out there. It can also be very scary because we don't really know what it is that's happening to us. We are experiencing these symptoms that we might never have heard of before, and in the beginning we often don't know that it actually has something to do with hormones. We are oftentimes diagnosed with stress or depression or something completely other than hormones. So a lot of women are feeling scared and left alone, and this is what I could also see in the report, that they expressed as this feeling of not knowing what's happening to me, not knowing, is this normal? Is this dangerous? Should I do something about it? And I also noticed that a lot of women are sharing their a little bit negative experiences going to the GPs or the healthcare professionals. And that's what we also hear, unfortunately. And I think that's why a lot of women are taking taking the SoMe or the social media into consideration and talking about it there. So this is what we hear a lot about, at least that we need someone to talk to. So I'm happy that they do that.
Thank you. Stine?
Yes. I'm the other half of Hormoner på Arbejde, Hormones at Work. I'm also working as a natural hormone therapist on the side. I see women in my clinic every day. And that's women, all ages, very young women who have menstrual problems, cycles problems, mental problems that is related to their hormones. Women who have fertility problems, and women with the problems with the menopause and perimenopause. And often this is something that they choose to seek me out, either because they haven't had help from their general practitioner, or because they don't wish to have the treatment that they can be offered in the healthcare system. And a lot of the things I see in the report, the frustrations and not being taken seriously, and actually not. Some women, they come to me and they actually, after the first meeting, they say thank you for believing me when they express how they feel. This is a general feeling that they often get, that it's being neglected, that their symptoms aren't real, that it's something they believe in, and they make it stronger, that's psychological, when in fact a lot of these women are really suffering. So yeah, I can see that trend as well, that is being expressed in the
Thank you. And Maria, I don't know if you managed to get you on camera, but
No.
at least we can hear you.
Yes. Hello, my name is Maria. I apologize for the technical issues. But now for this panel, I take to the table a career as a health professional in nursing and intensive care nursing, and also an educator, and also in nursing and in sexual health. Other than in Denmark, I have experience from Afghanistan and India, Jamaica and China, and I have a master's degree in health strategies and international developments. And apart from this experience, I also have research experience from Uganda, where I was investigating sexual and reproductive health and rights for adolescents, which I've also will be publishing an article on. So, and one thing that stuck with me when reading this report is how these lived experiences can be perceived as patterns within a larger context, and especially like viewing these experiences in a gender norms perspectives that continue to marginalize women in healthcare, and particularly in sexual and reproductive health and rights, reflecting long-standing taboos and power structures.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, and I'm really impressed also by the breadth and width we have here. So many different perspectives and areas of expertise. So let's make sure that we use this panel. So we are here to discuss your questions and comments. There is a Q&A box that in Teams. So please post comments and questions there, and we will try to follow up during the session. Unfortunately, the setup we have does not allow for you to put voice to your questions, but we still hope to see a thriving chat, both to inspire our discussions in the room throughout the session, but also to understand what's important to you and try to bring that value across the screen. So we will try to answer throughout as possible, and then leave some time in the end to go over the questions. So we'll start by putting the function to the test. So we will post a question for you. So now we've analyzed what women talk about online concerning health. So what do you believe is the by far largest theme within women's health discussed online in Scandinavia? Put in your best guesses in the chat function, and we will reveal the answer shortly. So there. Just to start out, let's have a broad look on the topics of discussion before going into some more detailed discussions that we've selected for our conversation today. So overall, we collected data from June 1st, 23 to June 1st, 24. That means we have quite recency in our discussions, and we still have the amount or sufficient amount of data to make this analysis. We included posts that are written in either Danish, Norwegian, or Sweden. We did not include posts that were written in English because we cannot verify whether these come from the Scandinavian markets or some other markets in most of the channels that we can access. But most likely this would add a significant amount of data volume if we included all these discussion in English where Scandinavian women participate. So after a thorough review and cleansing, we ended up with around 365,000 posts online where women discuss some parts and challenges, experience that they have concerning their health. And approximately 2 out of 3 of these posts and discussions come from topic-specific forums. An example could be kvindeguiden.no in Norway. 1/5 came from Reddit and 10% from Twitter, and of course or X, and of course what we see there is more politically oriented, whereas all the others on the forums is more individual, personal, and close to their own lives. Sources such as YouTube or Instagram are not commonly used to discuss health, as we see here. And to us, this shows that women who engage in health discussions online, they are seeking both anonymity, so you can do that on forum. You don't have to put your face and name there, right, as you do on social media. There's also some intimacy. It's smaller forums. It's only to the right people. And of course, there's also the relevancy. And now I go into a forum talking specifically about cancer experience, about menopause experience. So it's relevant. So anonymity, intimacy, and relevance is what we see as a sort of common theme for the discussions online. And a quick question to our panel here. What's your take? Why do we see this wealth of data and this significant number of women discussing health online? I know, Mette, you had a comment.
Yeah, well, I'm just one thing that I'd like to comment on is at least that it's interesting that the fact that the conversations takes place in forums, to me, is a testimony that the women are seeking confirmation and rather than information. Maybe information secondarily, but rather than having, I mean, it's an opportunity to discuss with people who are in the same situation and be confirmed that what their experiences are normal, rather than seek perhaps new information. Sorry, I just got a yeah. But that was one thing that I think that was striking, that they are in the anonymous forums rather than online.
Yeah. To us, we also typically see when people discuss health online, it's based on some sort of uncertainty, right? There's also availability of answers when they cannot find them, and of course this validation and sharing. So when we do this analysis, our starting point is this wealth of themes and clusters, and we get this map of the online dialogue that is generated by our social intelligence tool. So after thorough cleansing and validation, we get these sort of interactive maps where we can double click on themes and clusters and subclusters to go in and read what's actually being said and analyze the discussion. So these maps and overviews are outlined in the full report, and we always have the opportunity to go back and revisit some of the discussions that we did not pursue in this research. We focused our research here on 5 key themes that are identified during this exploration and looking through this map, and then we further designed our search queries to bring in more insight into these topics. So, and the 5 we selected are cancer, gynecological health, sexual health, reproductive health, and mental health. And there might be some overlap when you first think about it, but for us there are some clear definition on what is what that we've listed here, and you can look into at a later point. A curiosity to just keep in mind when we interpret the results and the findings that we share today is, so we also ran a sentiment analysis among these online discussions, and perhaps naturally they are more likely to focus on the negative experience than the positive. And that, of course, might also influence what we see today. Keep in mind, this is what's being expressed online. It's not the full truth, but there's a lot of truth and interest in this. So if you guessed reproductive health, you were right. I don't know if there were anyone who did that or what the best guesses were, but it's
Infertility.
infertility, yes, and that's the right guess here as well. No, one of the first things that really struck us was how much of the online discussion concentrate on reproductive health. So almost 2 in 3 posts across the markets concern reproductive health. So both in trying to get pregnant in the early stages, infertility, the pregnancy, postpartum, all these discussions is really a big theme. For the other themes we selected, the volume are quite similar. We do note that sexual health is more present in Sweden in compared to Norway and Denmark, as well as cancer show in a larger share of the discussions in Denmark. Interestingly for us, we see that the Norwegian post account for almost half of the posts we identified. It could suggest that Norwegian women are more vocal online than their Danish and Swedish counterparts, but it may also have some influence of what we can access, and also how many of, for example, the Danes and Swedes that participate in discussions in English rather than local language. Comparing the markets further, we did note some interesting differences, and one thing is that discussions on unhealthy relationship and domestic violence is more present in Denmark and Sweden than it is in Norway. It can be anything from interpersonal relationship issues, day-to-day conflicts, infidelity, breaks up, also emotional and physical abuse, and also more severe things like sexual assault, rape, victim blaming, justice challenges. They show up and is often related to some sort of frustration with men's behavior and the current legal framework. What we consider is that it might also be because in Denmark and Sweden, we implemented consent-based law, which might also have diffused into the online dialogue. We also see that Norwegian and Swedish women show more concerns about the country's low birth rate in the online discussion, and it's really something that's in focus, where also the theme of having to boost fertility to both sustain culture and sustain welfare become part of the health discussion online. In Norway, we see the low birth rate being linked to both high living costs, lack of economic resources to take care of a child. And in Sweden, we see the similar concerns and focus on economic challenges in terms of having children. But we also see them in Sweden discuss the need for better family and housing policies as part of this discussion. And interestingly, of course, environmental concerns were also discussed online as a reason for considering not having children, at least. In Norway, we also see discussions on sexual experience and norm being more prevalent. So what's a good experience, preferences, perceptions, sort of understanding and challenging the sexual norms. We see body image perceptions being reflected a lot as playing a part in feeling comfortable doing sex, as well as how health-related issues such as childbirth and menopause also affect sex life. We also see that the HPV vaccine is a large topic among Norwegian women online. The emphasis is mostly on the importance of the vaccine and the inclusion in public programs. We also see many express disappointment about not having received the vaccine due to either their specific birth year or simply not knowing about it. And we also see many anecdotes, people who got cancer that are shared to promote the vaccines. Of course, we also have many discussions cover negative experience with adverse events and skepticism about the benefits and long-term safety. In Denmark, the new legislation of abortion also showed up in discussion. So in May 24, the limit for automatically approved abortion got extended from the 12th to the 18th week in pregnancy. And this also we can tell resulted in some ethical debates online, both as some see it as a victory for women's right, but also people questioning the necessity and sort of the right of the unborn child. A curiosity is also that menopause show relatively less in Denmark that we see in Norway and Sweden, even though it was a common in all three markets. It just had a lower volume, and also the volume was actually not big enough to show on the sort of overall maps. It's only when we look deeper into that menopause become a bigger theme in Denmark than what we saw in Norway and Sweden. So with that first outline, I'd like to hear from the panel. So why do you see reproductive health being such a large theme in the discussions? Maria?
Well, to answer your question, Stephen, I'd like to take a step back and explain reproductive health in a more historical light, because, well, you see, sexual and reproductive health and rights has always been a female issue, and it's predominantly taken place in the private sphere because this was where women have historically been confined to due to their reproductive roles. So and then in opposition, you have men who have had access to the public sphere and the authority to make decisions on behalf of women's bodies. And this is reinforced an androcentric medical model where women's bodies were considered deviations of male bodies. So you see, by under-researching, underfunding, and under-acknowledging reproductive health has been pushed into the shadow, along with certain health conditions that women identify with. And it's been made invisible to the public interest. You know, to just draw some examples, for example, grouping sexual and reproductive health together, contraception. Women in the Nordic countries have had access to the contraceptive pill since the 1960s. And this was hugely emancipatory at the time, but to this day, women still remain disproportionately targeted for the emotional, financial, and health-related costs of contraception. And there have been efforts to develop male contraceptives, but they've been delayed for centuries. And this reinforces the notion that contraception is a woman's work. Women carry the burden and the consequences along with the responsibility. And you see also with fertility treatments, it demonstrates this gendered bias where women are the primary subject to intervention. Despite decline in sperm quality, from the 1970s to 2011, there's been a decline of 50%. So I think the reason why reproductive health, sexual and reproductive health, is such a large area in your data, it reflects this pressure that women are under for having the sole responsibility for reproduction, and not only the burden. And at the same time, sexual and reproductive health has been hidden away from the public discourse. It's been, due to being underfunded and under-prioritized, it's left a gap in the medical knowledge, leading women to seek support and information elsewhere.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you. I know, Terry, you also had some of the same thoughts, and
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of what Maria says is what we see as well, and it's talking about like the quality of sperm. It's not only been declining; it's going to keep declining if it continues as it is now. There's a study from 2013 that's shown that if it keeps declining the way it has been by 2044, so in 20 years, it's going to be zero, the quality of the sperm. And it's not to say that it's only men's fault that fertility is an issue at the moment, but you do see the media, and I can only speak for Denmark, but you should see the Danish media saying women are birthing less children, where it's like, well, it's not only women in this struggle. But when it comes to it, it can be a man with a problem with his quality of sperm, but it's another person that will need to go into treatment for it. So it is, from what I know, the only illness out there where it's not the person who's something wrong with, but someone else who needs to go through a treatment for that person. So again, to what Maria says, it's very much the responsibility gets put onto the woman, both socially in how it's spoken about in media, but also in how we then treat it on the other side. And then you have something like social freezing, which most people don't even know that's the name, but that's when women choose to freeze eggs that are unfertilized to then use at a later point. And in Denmark, in Denmark, we're very far behind places like the UK or Germany. So we can do it, but it's very expensive. It's very painful, both the hormonal injections and having to live through what that's going to do to your body, but also extracting the eggs. And then we don't even really know at the moment if it's going to work. So you might go back in 5-10 years time to use those eggs, but it might not actually work. But at least they've changed the law from freezing for 5 years up to 46 years. So there's a little bit of process happening, but it's there's a lot of talk, but not a lot of action. Is what I see. But at least they've given couples the chance to do fertility treatment number 2, been paid for by the public. So there is things happening, but it's very much still getting put onto women as it's our fault that there's not more children being born into the world, when it's not just a women's problem.
And I know we could talk a lot in this discussion and elaborate, but let this be sort of entry to the discussion, and we can always pick it up at a later stage. So when we double clicked and looked deeper into these topics that are being discussed online, one of the key discussions, and I'm also happy to hear that many of you mention it as one of the things that struck you when reading the full report, is that there are a lot of these uncertainties and challenges to what should be considered normal, and reflections on whether or not a symptom or an issue should simply be accepted as part of womanhood, both in terms of the menstrual cycle and also in menopause and so on. So as a result, we titled this webinar, "Is This Normal?" in reference to the many questions that we saw and encountered online that included this type of reflections. So a key element in these discussions are the complexities of the female physiology with cyclical hormonal changes and this in evolving reproductive life stages through the entire life, that kinds of make it difficult to define a normal for an individual, both in terms of throughout life, but also in between women. So the sort of uniqueness of how these complexities play out. So it not only makes it difficult to define a health normality, it also shows in consequences in, for example, response to treatment and meeting with the healthcare professionals, which we will now elaborate. So a bit of context to this. So historically, we see that clinical trials have also often excluded women because these hormonal fluctuations make them more unreliable research subjects. So of course, if you want to test the effect, if there is a fluctuation or a change in the response, it has at least historically been difficult to use in medical research. And we have seen extensive effort and legislation been put in place to limit this gender bias today. But as we see it, there are still repercussions. So there are some general knowledge gaps in women's health overall, of course, as much research builds on these pre-existing knowledge. There's also knowledge gaps on this women's symptomatic picture where it differs from men. So the current example right now is within ADHD or ADD, where we now observe a surge in diagnosis for women after more awareness has been put on how this condition shows in women in compared to men or boys typically, where it has been the hyperactive element that has been the sort of diagnosing criteria to a larger extent. So the differences in physiology and the hormonal fluctuations also mean that, yeah, women's response to medication may differ from men's, and although not necessarily linked, we do see an overrepresentation of women in adverse drug reactions, and which was quite interesting for us to see. So there are some studies out there with worrying numbers, to say the least. So we have a study published this year showing that 89% of drug ADR combinations, so adverse drug reactions reporting, with gender differentiated outcomes are more common among women. So for 89% of those combinations, there are an overrepresentation of women reporting adverse events. We also have this report from 19, where we see a global screening of more than 15 million adverse drug reaction reports, and showed that out of all of these, 60.1% concerned women. So we cannot say for sure there is a link, but it's at least an interesting thought to see why this is happening. And online, we then see a lot of women also seeking knowledge and sharing frustration with healthcare professionals. We did last year a study in the UK called Hysterical Health that also showed that even today we still tend to link many symptoms back to either reproductive organs or the general state of being female. It's a really interesting report that I will also recommend for you to have a look at if you're interested in this stuff. But online in Scandinavia, these ideas also show when we see how many women actually express that their health concerns are not being taken seriously when meeting healthcare professionals. Ella did a very nice study last year where we also saw that almost half of all Danish women have experienced not being taken seriously at their GP, compared to only about 30% of men. And the share is even larger among younger women. And the way we see it online is typically through 3 common stories. So either is these, if there are physical symptoms, that they are considered as a mental health problem. Those stories are plentiful. We also see women complain, at least, or have experienced it. I mean, we only have the experience that they share, of course, to go by, but at least they experience that whatever symptom they have may be seen as natural, acceptable as part of being a woman, either due to the menstrual cycle or hormonal fluctuations or the menopause. And also many complain that they are generally ignored or belittled. And it has been proven in Denmark that there is a delay for diagnosis for women across most therapy areas, 4 years in areas across the 770 types of diseases that were included in the study that we referred to here. So a quick round with the panel. In your view, why do we see so many ask online whether their symptoms are normal?
Yeah, well, I think this is some of the data that you've shown here is just really concerning, and but it shows that even though we may have started to see more women entering the studies, there is still a huge gap in terms of knowing how, let's say, different types of medicine work, whether it's on the male body or the female body. And if you're not met with that concern, then obviously you need to go somewhere else and then find confirmation that it's not just you, it's actually something that is normal. So I think that's part of what we see here. Another concern is really that if you're not being met with understanding, so even though, you know, if you are presenting some symptoms and you are not being met with understanding, I think that it's something that you need to then try and seek information for elsewhere. But if the information is not out there, then how can you then be confirmed that it is in fact normal? So you can try and ask, but normal people are not professionals in what, so you can only speak from your own perceptions and experiences, and that's a good thing to start. But where the real struggle is to get the professional community to really hear and accept and engage in that conversation with women.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also important to underline that even though things might be normal, I mean, we might have a cycle or symptoms of menopause. It's not the same as it's being okay. So it's okay I mean, it's normal to have symptoms. It may be normal to have PMS, but it's not the same as you just have to accept it. So I think that's quite important too. And when you go out there and you're trying to find out if this is normal, then it's also, I think, a confirmation of is this dangerous? Is this something I should do something about? Or is it just something I should just accept as being part of being a woman? I see that as a clear sign as well.
Yeah. So maybe it's also a transition to a follow-up, but we also have two clinicians in the room who have met women out there in these interactions. How do you experience them, Stine?
Yeah. Well, I actually experienced that women are often concerned if they go to their practitioner and they don't feel like they're being taken seriously, that this might just be hormones, or it might just be PMS, or maybe it's just psychological, and then they seek advice to ask, is this really true? I mean, is it really something I just have to accept? And some women even get concerned by saying, is there something that my doctor is overlooking? Are there some symptoms here that I need to insist to be treated, to be examined more thoroughly? And then they often seek support in these social media to go back and insist and get that confirmation from other women.
Yeah. Maria?
And I also think, Stephen, that there's a problem with how we've set up the parameters for normality and how we've put up, understand deviation as a counterpart, because normality is something that's completely socially constructed and completely context dependent. So, and this goes for statistical, medical and biological standards, where we have normal and then we have outliers, or something that's simply pathological. So if you have women are doubting what should be considered normal because the normality concept is set up too rigid. It's built around the male body. You have symptoms, diseases, conditions, health interventions. They're all set up for women to deviate. And this is why it's so important to include women in research, because we need to broaden the concept of normality to be more plural.
Yeah. So thank you very much for that. And again, another discussion where we could have an hour continuing it. But I just wanted to highlight a few more of the key themes that we see online. And another interesting aspect is this signs of increased health productivity among women. So, and it's visible across the themes and discussions that we see. So this productivity can potentially be influenced by this unclear definition of normality, right? A desire for change, and also this experienced lack of understanding from healthcare professionals that we see women online express. So what we see online is that it's very prevalent, the sharing of tips and stories and experiences, seeking validation, confirmation. We also have a widespread discussion on the use of health monitoring technology to sort of understand the complexities of the body and maybe try to define an individual normal. And especially we see tracking apps being popular within gynecological health and the reproductive health discussions. But also when we zoom in on the cancer discussions, right, some of the main themes that come out are self-examination, getting tested, the use of genetic test kits, which show this desire at least to be more proactive. We also see many discuss the role of nutrition in recovery phases, and also many discussions on related to this discussion on the meeting with the healthcare professional, how to be persistent, how to keep going and really sort of push each other to go there. Do not accept being dismissed or being belittled, but show persistence in these healthcare professional dialogues, and also seek second opinions elsewhere from other sources, and a lot, of course, independent research for symptom and solution as well. So a quick round with the panel. How do you understand this trend for proactivity and the use of apps that we see online?
I think, and I can partly speak for myself because I switched to an app to track my period. But I've also, it's a big discussion topic in my group of friends. But it's very much a want to be more in control. I feel like what we read and what we hear is, and what we understand also once we get off hormonal contraception, is that we're not that much in control. We're on hormones. They have been a great invention back in the day because they liberated us in a lot of ways. But there hasn't been a lot of updates done since. And as Maria also pointed out earlier, both with the previous conception, but also with this testing, is that it still leads all the responsibility on the woman. So it's still up to me to keep track and know when I can have safe sex and when I cannot. So I think there is a lot of wanting to take back control and understanding what's going on in our bodies and understanding why our bodies work the way they do, and letting our brains come back to normal in some kind of way. But that's what I've kind of can feel in my group of people around me is what we're talking about.
Yeah, I can actually confirm this trend amongst the women that I'm seeing, that there's a lot of women who are on some sort of hormone contraception most of their lives. And then when they want to get pregnant, when they want to conceive, that's when they let it go. And then they experience a lot of symptoms and become a little bit foreign to what's happening with my body. And it's exactly this attempt to try to take control, understanding what's happening with my cycles. Why do I feel like that? And is there a pattern every month? I also have clients who have a pulse watch to track their sleep, because their sleep is so disturbed that they can't tell the difference between have I actually slept or have I wake up every hour. So they need a watch to get some sort of objective confirmation of yeah, that was a bad night, that was a good night, yeah, my pulse was a little high, I am stressed, I'm pressured. A way to document it's right what I'm feeling. And some of them use it to go back to their doctor and say, it's not just me, I'm not making it up, this is actually something that's happening.
Very interesting. Another topic that we want to touch upon today, and which is close to the hearts of parts of our panel at least, is menopause. And we do see that it seems that online forums help women navigate all these uncertainties around menopause, and we see quite a lot of worries about menopausal symptoms being expressed online. And many women show uncertainties how to understand, how to manage these symptoms. Especially, we see many discussions focusing on figure out whether a symptom is normal. Is it something to be expected, or could it be a sign of something worse? Also indicating some lack of knowledge when it comes to menopause. Discussions also reveal a lot of confusion in the perimenopause, where many, and we see discussions how women seek both healthcare professional support, and this interest in hormone level testing comes out also in the discussion for people to seek clarity in terms of their own individual situations. But also here we see many stories where women refer to frustration with healthcare professionals who, at least in their experience, don't have sufficient knowledge on menopause or do not acknowledge their symptoms. Interestingly, this leads to another discussion in many of these online channels where women discuss how actually to approach healthcare professionals with their menopausal issues, which was quite interesting to look into. What reflections do these discussions on menopause start with you in the panel?
Well, I have a reflection at least on that, because we've been working very closely with this field as well, and clearly see that this is something that is so lacking of information and some general validated information that you can access. So you, for a long time, menopause has just been something that, you just have to live with, and then just accept that and it's been generally accepted that it's about hot flashes and night sweats, and that's it. And but all the other symptoms are not known, or at least not addressed, and you cannot find very much information about it. You have to really dive into various small, you have to be really, really good at researching to find validated information on that. I think in Norway they do have more information available from a public stand, whereas in Denmark there is no such thing. Imagine if you were turning 45 and then you received a letter from the authorities saying, this is not a scare letter, but just information. These are all the general symptoms. Just to ignite that dialogue that you can easily take with your doctor. I mean, if you had that information, it would be okay for you to come and say to your doctor, you know what, I think I experienced this. And then it would be a much more informed dialogue that you could have. That's just one thing, but I think the lack of information in this field is so big. And I guess that's why so many women are turning to the online fora and asking for, does anyone else have information or symptoms that they can relate to?
Yeah.
I think the width in the symptoms as well is just, it's so wide, and especially in the perimenopause, which can start as early as the late 30s or beginning 40s. You're not thinking menopause. For my own sake, I came with a foot that really hurt. I mean, that would not be something considering menopause. And so you have symptoms that are not necessarily connected if you don't know that these are all symptoms of hormonal changes, and the GPs don't know either that they're connected. So you're sent to further examinations in all different directions, instead of someone looking at all of them together and saying maybe there's a red thread here and it can all be hormonal changes. And this is what you can get online. So you have a much larger group of women that are all experiencing these symptoms. I think there's more than 50 symptoms, at least there's still some debate about that, but there are many symptoms. And I totally agree that the lack of information in Denmark is huge. I think maybe one of the reasons why you also experienced that there wasn't that much debate about it is that we just recently started discussing this also online in Denmark. We've been very, very slow at discussing perimenopause and menopause, and we're just getting up to speed, whereas in Norway and Sweden, they have debating this for a lot longer than we have. I think we're getting there, but we're just slow starters in this area.
Yeah. So, yeah, there are so many interesting discussions, and again, we could spend an hour on each of them. We have limited time today, so I just wanted to hint at some of the other detailed discussions that can be found in the full report. And one of the key discussions is also this. So we do see an overrepresentation of women in mental health statistics in all the Scandinavian countries, and we also see this reflected in the online discussions, and the general take it. Also, because of the long waiting list we see, of course, in Denmark and also the other markets, is that they try to pursue solutions outside the official system. And I'll leave that as a cliffhanger to read more. We also see many women share frustration with contraception, and at least traditional contraception, and move away from these hormonal contraceptions online. And we also see a lot of women gather around infertility, and we have a interesting discussion on how this use of fertility tracking apps not only affect women positively, but also can have some negative experience. Further than this, we also identified and outlined the key trends and unmet needs within our 5 selected themes. So reproductive health, gynecological health, sexual health, mental health, and cancer. And for all of these big themes, we have some key trends and unmet needs that are in the report. We will zoom in now quickly on reproductive health, and then just for you to get a sense of it, and then I think we'll spend the rest of the time with potential questions from the audience. So 3 behavioral trends stand out from the discussions on reproductive health. So again, the fertility tracking and the use of apps that we also discussed earlier. We also see empowerment on control. I think we discussed this as well. To increase their own understanding of their hormonal health, seek education, seek knowledge, and try to figure out their individual situation. And we also see a lot of women demonstrate an interest online in holistic approaches, so discussing supplements, lifestyle changes, and so on. Try to address it from a non-medical way. In terms of the unmet needs, so currently we really see an outspoken need for better postpartum support being discussed online. Many women share how they struggle with depression and taking care of themselves and their family, of course, after giving birth, and revealing a lot of frustration and hope for better support options. Many discussions are also on how best to improve health before, during, and after pregnancy, where many women seek guidance online. We also see many women seek advice on follicle stimulating hormone treatment, so FSH treatment, especially how long they should endure it, and which is also can be a hint of the negative experiences and concerns that are associated to this treatment. And also we see a lot of discussions on the uncertainties regarding IVF being common. So both in terms of price, the access, is it best to go via public and a private route? So
There is a question.
yes, let's take the final minutes we have, and we will stay on to answer some questions. So yeah, I'll remind you, you'll distribute the full report. You can put in your question now, and we will follow up either now, and then we can follow up in written after the session.
Yeah, from Hilda, is all the data regarding reproductive health about infertility or also including general pregnancy? And the answer is yes, it also includes general pregnancy and also after getting birth, all of that. Yeah. And you also say that beauty ideals and dieting would be interesting in the next report for further research. Thank you a lot for the suggestion.
Yeah,
I think so too. It's very relevant.
So yeah, do post your questions. Otherwise, I will also hand over to the panel to just a big small comment on what we saw within reproductive health. If there is anything. Mm-hmm.
I can talk about, you said that there was a need for better postpartum support, and also talking about the normality concept again, especially this area is very interesting because in my opinion, it shows a problem of twofold. It's a mental health issue and it's also a physical health issue that women, also their partners, deal with. Recently, I was interviewing a midwife and she explained that 10% of women and their partners have postnatal reactions. And these couples and these women, they go under the radar because, you know, it's normal to react. It's normal that it's tough and you have hormones all over the place in this specific time of your life. And we need more research in order to understand what it is that happens for these women in order to help them transition and design better health promoting interventions. And also, like with postpartum rehabilitation, I know that there is a growing body of specialized rehabilitation, but there is also there are a lot of problems for women after giving birth. Incontinence, uterine prolapse, bowel prolapse, and diastasis recti. So there also needs to be a lot more focus on this, as the report shows, definitely.
Cool. All right, we've hit our hour mark. Unless there are any final remarks, we will say a big thank you for those who listened in. We will share our full report with you, and we hope it was interesting and could inspire some reflections and debate out there, and maybe even push some agendas in terms of the issues that we saw. That is our hope. Big thank you for everyone here, and thank you online, and enjoy the rest of your days.